I'm Laurel Jennings, 36 years old, and for nearly 2 decades I covered every birthday dinner, every missed mortgage payment, every quiet emergency that no one else in my family wanted to deal with on Thanksgiving. Last year, my sister raised her glass and said something that made the whole table fall silent. She laughed, they all did, and in that still moment I realized something. I wasn't a daughter, I wasn't a sister. I was a wallet with a heartbeat, and by the time dessert hit the table, they were about to find out I'd closed it for good before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while everyone else just expected you to. I grew up just outside Louisville, Kentucky, in a plain, single-story house where the front porch creaked when you stepped too hard and the scent of lemon oil polish clung to the air. Long after Sunday chores were done, my parents were steady folks. Dad ran his own HVAC repair truck. Mom taught second grade for 31 years. They weren't ones for big speeches, but they had their sayings. Don't stir the pot. Do your part and keep your head down. My younger sister Holly was the spark in every room. She could charm the cashier with one giggle and had a dozen dreams before she even finished high school. Wanted to be a singer, then a stylist, then a wellness coach. She floated from one idea to the next, always landing on her feet, or rather on someone else's dime. I was the opposite. I liked order rules. I built my first church newsletter site when I was 12 and started taking on freelance coding gigs before I could drive. I left home at 19, supported myself through college, and worked nights at a data center to make ends meet, while Holly switched majors 3 times, racked up debt, moved in and out of apartments with men who never stuck around. Each time there was a crisis, someone had to clean it up, and that someone was me first. It was just the little things: gas money or an overdue electric bill. Then came tuition, help car repairs, credit card debt, the kind she didn't want our parents to see. I never asked for thanks. I just figured if I helped long enough, she'd eventually stand on her own. She never did. And the more I gave, the less they seemed to see me at all. I went from dependable to cold, like being quiet and reliable made me invisible. One Thanksgiving 2 years ago, Holly gave me a mug that said Queen of Solitude. Everybody laughed. I smiled too and thanked her, but something about that moment stuck with me. She thought it was funny. So did everyone else. I was the one always showing up, the one paying for the vacation home, the gifts, the down payment on her condo, the surgery our dad's insurance didn't cover, and yet in every family photo, I was on the edge, barely there. So last Thanksgiving, when Holly stood up in front of that long pinewood table, the one we always rented for holidays, and raised her glass with that same smirk I'd seen since childhood, I already knew something was about to break, and this time it wasn't going to be me. Holly didn't flinch. She just stood there at the head of the table, one hand lifted with her champagne glass like she was making some charming little toast. "To the failure who just stopped paying for everything you own," she said, smiling straight at me. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. But then the room went quiet, in the way only deep embarrassment can make a room go quiet. No one moved. Not the cousins, not my uncle with the wine glass halfway to his mouth, not even my mother. The air in that rented farmhouse dining room thinned out so fast I felt the back of my neck grow warm. Holly didn't laugh. She froze too, like she hadn't quite believed she'd say it out loud. Or maybe she had, and she thought the room would laugh along with her like always. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her for a moment, then turned to the restaurant manager, who had been waiting quietly near the edge of the room. He stepped forward when I nodded, holding a slim black checkbook in both hands. "This dinner's not on me," I said. "Not the car insurance, not the condo bills, not the health fund. Starting tonight, it's all off my books." Holly's eyes blinked once slow. Dad shifted in his seat, his chair creaking under the sudden weight of attention. Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Nobody said a word. It was like I'd dropped a plate, only there was no sound, just the feeling that something fragile had cracked wide open. Holly was the first to leave. Her heels tapped a steady rhythm as she walked across the hardwood floor and out the front door without looking back. A few others followed her. I stayed where I was, sitting at the end of the table, watching as the servers began clearing plates no one had touched. The slices of pie still glistened under the lights, barely forked. The room slowly emptied. My parents didn't say goodbye. Even after all that, I still paid the bill. I didn't want anyone saying I made a scene over money. That had never been the point. By the time I got home that night, the messages had already started. My father's came first. That wasn't fair. Rachel, you blindsided everyone. That's not how we handle things in this family. Then my mother's voicemail followed. Sweetheart, Holly was just being playful. Don't let one silly moment ruin all we've built together. Let's have lunch, just you and me. Holly sent 3 texts in a row. You seriously embarrassed me. Grow up. You're not a victim. Hope your money keeps you warm. I didn't write back. I just opened my laptop and pulled up the old file I'd kept for years, the spreadsheet where I tracked every dollar, every bill, every favor. At first, it was just for organization. Over time, it became a kind of journal. A record of what I gave and what was never returned. $18,400 in rent and utilities, $11,200 in medical expenses, nearly $10,000 in startup money for businesses Holly never finished. Another $6,500 in car repairs. Thousands more across groceries, holiday gifts, and forgotten bills. In 7 years, the total sat just shy of $50,000. That didn't even include the down payment on her condo or the legal fees I covered quietly after she got into trouble with a former employer. I sent them the file. Just the file. Subject line. In case you forgot. The next morning, Holly replied with one line. Wow, you really are that insecure. Congrats, you win a medal. I didn't open the rest. Later that day, my mother left another message. Her voice was soft. This isn't like you, she said. You're hurt, I understand, but don't burn bridges over something said in the moment. I didn't return the call. 2 days later, Holly's boyfriend messaged me. I didn't even realize he followed me online. You tried to humiliate her. Hope it was worth it. And then it happened, the moment that broke through whatever restraint I had left. I got an alert from a shared bank account I'd opened years ago for my mother. A grocery store near Holly's place, then a salon charge, then a boutique, a spa gift certificate, all within 2 days. I logged in, transferred the balance, and shut the whole thing down. Canceled the card, removed the linked number, closed the account completely. Not in anger, not to make a point. I just didn't want it happening again. That was when it sank in. I hadn't made a scene at Thanksgiving. I'd just stopped pretending. A week passed. No calls, no texts, no family group chat full of memes and weather updates. I left that chat without saying anything, just tapped the leave group button and moved on. Then one afternoon, I found a plain cream-colored envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in shaky, familiar handwriting. My father's. Inside was a small stack of papers, held together with a paper clip and a short note. Rachel, it began, we've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. But you need to know what's going on. I didn't know where else to turn. His note was short. The documents weren't. There were statements from their joint account showing withdrawals over the last 2 years, small amounts at first, then larger ones. Most were labeled with an H. Jennings. Money transfers, ATM cash, pulls app payments. Some had names I'd seen on Holly's social media posts. Then there was a printed email from my father to a financial advisor. The house, the same one I'd grown up in, wasn't paid off like I'd always believed. It had been refinanced. Twice. And now they were behind on payments weeks away from default. One sentence in that email caught my eye and didn't let go. I've tried talking to Holly. She says she's handling it, but Rachel can't know. She's done enough already. He'd never said that to me. But there it was. On paper. They hadn't asked for help this time. But the damage had already been done. Their home, their stability, the place they built, it was all crumbling because they'd handed Holly the reins one too many times. I sat in my kitchen, the documents spread across the table, the mug of tea in front of me, cold. I didn't move for a long while. This wasn't about a toast anymore. This was years of being quiet, useful, and invisible. And now I had to choose walk away completely, or try to stop it before it all collapsed. I made a call the next morning. Her name was Marissa Adler, a lawyer, a name I'd been given years ago but never thought I'd need. What came next would change everything. Marissa Adler's office was on the third floor of a plain brick building with a view of the courthouse parking lot. Nothing about the place felt flashy or cold. The waiting room had a coffee pot that still sputtered when you turned it on, and a basket of peppermints near the window. She met me at the door herself, introduced me with a firm handshake, and didn't waste a second on small talk. That was fine. I hadn't come for comfort. I brought everything: printouts, bank statements, screenshots, the envelope my father had sent. I even printed the spreadsheet I'd used for years to track my contributions. I slid them across her desk in silence and watched as she looked over each one without blinking. Page by page, line by line, she didn't flinch. When she finished, she set her pen down and folded her hands. "What you're describing," she said, "is patterned. Financially and emotionally. You've been carrying them." I nodded, but didn't speak. "They've come to rely on your silence," she added. "If we're going to change that, you need structure, something they can't bend when it suits them." That word structure stayed with me. It didn't sound like revenge. It didn't even sound like fairness. It sounded like a beginning. We started with the house. The house on Willow Bend Lane, the one with the faded green shutters and the uneven stepping stones that led to the backyard. According to my father's documents, it was deeply in the red. 2 rounds of refinancing a home equity line and payments overdue by nearly 3 months. Marissa recommended we act quickly. We set up a private trust under my name. The trust would purchase the house outright, eliminating the debt, but with stipulations. My parents would retain full residence rights for life, meaning they couldn't be removed, couldn't be displaced, but they also wouldn't be allowed to borrow against the property again. If they attempted to, the trust would lock. No discussions, no loopholes. Then we turned to the debt. There were 2 personal loans, several credit cards, and a handful of medical bills I hadn't known about. I agreed to pay them all using my investment income, but only under one condition: every transaction would be documented, signed, and filed. No more quiet transfers. No more whispered favors that left no paper trail. If anyone asked for help, it would go through the trust. Holly wasn't included. Marissa didn't ask why, and I didn't offer. The documents were drawn up within a week. The language was clear and firm. Each clause outlined what could and couldn't happen. Every dollar accounted for. I read through it one section at a time, circling anything that needed review. The folder on my lap felt heavier than the one my father had mailed. We mailed the packet on a Wednesday. The letter was formal. No emotion. No explanation. Just the facts: the house was no longer in jeopardy. My parents would be protected, but not in control. This wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. There was no reply for a few days. Then my mother called. I didn't answer. She tried again, and then a third time. The only message Holly sent was 6 words. "You've completely lost your mind." I didn't respond. It wasn't about cutting anyone out. It was about stepping away from the middle. The following Tuesday, we all met in Marissa's office to sign the final papers. My parents arrived 15 minutes early. Dad wore the same sports coat I remembered from high school open house nights. Mom's hair was pulled back into a low twist, the kind she always wore for church. There was no argument, no speeches, just silence. They read each page carefully. Dad asked 2 questions about the trust's terms. Mom didn't ask anything. When she reached the signature page, her hand shook slightly, but she didn't pause. When the last signature was done, she looked up at me and said, "Thank you." I nodded. No hugs, no tears, just the sound of folders closing. Holly didn't come. I hadn't expected her to. That night I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch with the final deed sitting on the coffee table. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet you can hear in your chest. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like something inside me had shifted positions. The weight was still there. It had just moved. The next few days passed without anything dramatic. I didn't check social media. I didn't look for updates. I didn't post any either. Then Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, not rushed, not loud. I looked through the peephole. Holly. No makeup, a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, hair pulled into a knot at the top of her head. She wasn't here for show. I opened the door halfway. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped back to let her in. She walked straight to the center of the living room like she always had, like the space still belonged to her. She crossed her arms. "So that's it," she said. "You just buy the house and cut everyone out." I didn't answer right away. Do you even realize how that makes you look? Like some power-hungry control freak who thinks she can fix everything with money? I picked up the folder from the coffee table and handed it to her. Page 4. She looked down at it but didn't open it. "I didn't know about the loan," she said. "That wasn't me." "Then explain the transfers," I said. "They're in your name." She held the folder but didn't speak. "You could have told me," she said. "You didn't have to go behind my back." "I did tell you," I said. "Every time I paid your rent. Every time I covered a fee or a bounced check. You just didn't hear it because I never yelled." Her arms tightened around her chest. "So what now? You're done with me." "No," I said. "You're done with me the moment you raise that glass." She blinked once, then again. "It was a joke," she said. "It was the truth," I said. "Yours." Her eyes turned glassy, but no tears fell. "So what now? You get to look noble and I get nothing?" "No," I said. "You get to start from the ground." "Like I did." She stared at me. "You're really cutting me off." "Not out of spite," I said. "Out of survival." She stood still for another few seconds, then looked down at the folder one last time. "What do I even have left?" she asked. "Whatever you choose to build," I said. She turned toward the door. No slamming, no final words, just the quiet sound of her footsteps fading into the hallway. And this time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt space. After Holly left, the apartment was still. No echoes of her voice bouncing off the walls, no footsteps pacing the floor. I walked back into the living room and glanced at the folder sitting on the coffee table right where I'd placed it. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. Everything in it had already been said. That night I cooked a small dinner and let the quiet hang around me like a loose shawl. Not heavy, just present. 2 weeks passed. Marissa finalized the trust transfer right after the new year. The house was now protected with the deed held securely under the terms we'd written. There were no missed payments, no more hidden loans. Everything had been signed clean complete. My parents showed up for the signing without hesitation. My dad nodded at each page as if he already knew what it would say. Mom asked one question about the monthly living allowance, and that was it. When the last signature was added, the notary smiled and thanked us for being organized. Mom handed me the final page. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. I met her eyes. "No," I said. "I didn't." I let Marissa handle the rest. The monthly stipend we set up was modest, just enough for food, utilities, and prescriptions, nothing more. I hired an independent trustee to oversee it, someone neutral, someone who didn't know my family. That was part of the plan. Once the system was in place, I stepped away. I wasn't pulling the strings. That wasn't the point. 3 weeks later, I heard from a cousin that Holly had moved in with a friend across town. She'd tried working retail but left after a few days. Something about the manager's tone or how he handled the schedule. I didn't ask for more. That spring, a white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name in neat script. Inside was a Christmas card 6 months late. No photo, no glitter, no enclosed letter. Just one sentence written at the bottom in black ink. "We didn't deserve your grace, but thank you anyway." It was signed Mom. I didn't call. I sat with it quietly for a while, then placed it in the drawer with my old receipts and the printed copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't reopen it after that. Later that week, I put on a light jacket and went out for a walk. It was one of those gray days that can't decide between winter and spring. I passed the corner store, the barber shop with the open sign that flickered. I passed a couple walking their dog kids, tossing a soccer ball in the park. Nobody asked anything of me. No one called out. No text came through needing help. Just a regular day with no demands. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I had to be on alert. That weekend, I deleted the family calendar from my phone. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays gone. I canceled the floral deliveries I'd set up for Mother's Day and Father's Day. I created a new folder in my inbox, personal only. Nothing connected to family finances or group reminders. It wasn't about closing a door. It was about choosing what came through it. The change wasn't loud. It was quiet and slow. I didn't call just to smooth things over. I didn't jump in when a cousin posted about moving. I didn't drop everything when someone called me the dependable one. I started cooking more for myself, walked in the mornings, turned down a coworker's third request for me to cover her late shift. No one said anything. No one noticed. But I did. My conversations with my parents became polite, shorter. They called on holidays, sent the occasional check-in text. The tone was different, measured. No jokes about me being the bank. No guilt about missed birthdays. Just small talk, weather updates, things they'd read in the local paper. I hadn't heard from Holly, and I didn't reach out either. I knew through family she was working nights at a diner on the edge of town. I didn't ask which one. One afternoon, while sorting through an old file cabinet, I found a photo from a lake trip years ago. Holly in the center, smiling wide, Mom's hand on her shoulder. I was off to the side, one foot just barely in the frame, holding the camera remote. I remembered that trip. I paid for the whole thing, cabin, groceries, van rental. That year, Holly had just left another job and said she needed one last reset. I'd believed her. I slid the photo back into the folder and closed the drawer. That night, I made grilled chicken and vegetables, a glass of wine. I didn't answer any messages. I didn't hear from anyone. The oven ticked quietly as it cooled. The floor creaked once beneath my chair. It was early June when the voicemail came. Unknown number, local area code. A man's voice. He asked if this was Laurel Jennings, and if so, could I call him back. He said his name was Tom, and he worked over at the old flooring warehouse on Monroe Street. Said he might have something that belonged to me. That was all. I called back that evening. He picked up right away. "Thanks for returning my call," he said. "We've been clearing out leftover boxes from a foreclosure shipment last winter. Found something with your name on it." He gave the address. I told him I'd come by the next day. The warehouse sat behind a row of faded shipping containers. I hadn't been out that way in years. Tom met me at the side entrance. Gray hair, button-down shirt, keyring on his belt. He led me through a hallway that smelled faintly of paint and dust. In a small back office, a cardboard box sat on the desk. My last name written in black marker across the top. "I didn't open it," he said. "Figured you'd want to look through it first." I nodded and lifted the lid. Inside were old receipts, printed emails, and 2 spiral notebooks. Apartment applications filled out under Holly's name, with my email listed as the guarantor. I flipped through them. Some references were fake. The income wasn't hers. My name appeared several times. Never my signature. At the bottom of the box was a sticky note, faded ink. Just one sentence scribbled across it. "Ask Mom about using Laurel's trust. She won't say no if it's for them." I stood there for a while, reading it over and over again. I thanked Tom and took the box home. That night, I contacted the trustee, asked her to verify the access controls. She assured me everything was secure, no outside attempts, no unusual activity. Still, I added an alert system. Anytime someone tried to adjust paperwork or beneficiaries, I'd be notified. That was the first change. The second came a week later, my mother's voice on the phone, soft and careful. "She's been having a hard time," she said. "Tried applying for a few jobs. It hasn't been easy." I waited. "She's asked about moving back in," she continued. "Just for a little while, to regroup. We told her, it's not really our call anymore. She doesn't have rights to the house," I said. "It's in the agreement." "I know Mom said. I just thought maybe if she spoke to you." "She already did," I said. "At my door." There was a pause, then a quiet, "I didn't mean to put you in the middle." We both knew that wasn't true. We ended the call quietly. 2 days later, I got an email. Subject line, "You win." Nothing in the body. I didn't reply. That weekend, I drove out to the lake. Just me, a book and a paper bag lunch. I sat under the pines with the sun warming one shoulder. No calls. No updates, no emergencies. A small thing, but it mattered. It was a Tuesday morning when I walked into Marissa's office again. Same coffee pot sputtering in the corner. Same basket of peppermints on the windowsill. I sat down across from her and placed the sticky note from the box on the table. She read it once, then looked up at me. I didn't need to explain. She knew. We tightened the trust. Marissa added another layer of protection flagged alerts, additional verification protocols, locked access to the beneficiary section. If someone so much as typed in a new address, I'd get a notification. And just to be certain, we updated the trustee instructions to require verbal confirmation from both me and the administrator before any edits or changes could be approved. Holly wasn't named anywhere, and now she couldn't be. After that, Marissa paused, pen still in hand. "Have you considered mediation?" she asked. "A structured session, just to lay everything on the table." I hadn't, but I didn't dismiss it. Later that week, I got a call from Ryan, my cousin. We hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving. He kept his voice low, like he didn't want anyone on his end to overhear. "I've heard some things," he said, "about the trust, about Holly. It's getting tense." I waited. "She says she's trying," he added. "She's not proud of how everything happened, but she feels like you abandoned her." I didn't reply right away. He offered to meet in person. We met at a cafe on Main Street, the one with the checkerboard tile floor and booths lined with dark green cushions. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a cup of black coffee and staring out the window. He looked older somehow, worn down. "She's couch hopping," he said after a while. "Says she's working on getting steady work but keeps losing jobs. She's behind on rent again. Says nobody's willing to give her a chance." I didn't interrupt. "I know it's not fair to ask," he said. "But is there any middle ground?" I folded my hands in my lap. "The boundaries weren't drawn to punish her," I said. "They were drawn to protect what was left. And me." He nodded slowly. "She thinks you won." I looked past him toward the street. There wasn't a game. When I got home that night, the phone rang. Mom's voice on the other end was soft. "She's not with that friend anymore," she said. "We don't know where she is. She called once, said she was staying with someone on the other side of town. That's all she told us." I didn't say anything. She sounded tired. Mom continued. "Scared, maybe. I don't know. We just thought you should know." The silence on the line stretched a little too long. "She doesn't have access to the house," I said. "That's still true." "Yes," Mom said. "We haven't changed anything. We told her. I spoke to her once," I added. "She came to my door. I didn't mean to put you in the middle," she said again. I let the call end quietly. The next day, I met Marissa again. This time, I brought everything. The voicemail, the email from Holly, my notes from the meeting with Ryan. She listened without interrupting, then reached for a blank legal pad. "Let's update the trust one final time," she said. We added more safeguards. We documented everything again. Then she brought in a referral, a mediator. Neutral, certified, experienced with families in financial conflict. Her name was Elaine. Calm presence, clear eyes, no soft pedaling. The mediation took place in Marissa's office in the larger conference room with a view of the parking lot. It was early afternoon. Overcast sky, no rain, just that stillness that hangs in the air before a front moves in. My parents arrived first. They sat side by side, hands folded. No tears, no tension, just quiet. Holly arrived last. Gray sweater, hair pulled back, no jewelry, no performance. Elaine greeted each of us, then laid the rules out plainly. One person speaks at a time. No interruptions, no shouting. Everyone gets a turn. Mom went first. She spoke about watching her daughters drift apart, said she missed the days when we all sat around the same table, said she understood that things had changed. Dad stayed quiet for a while, then finally said he wished things had been handled differently, that he knew we couldn't go back. When it was Holly's turn, she hesitated. Then she spoke slowly. "I lost everything all at once," she said. "My apartment, my job, my family's trust. I didn't know how to land. I thought things would work out like they always had. I kept thinking something would show up to fix it." She admitted to taking the money, to hiding what she was doing. "I wasn't proud of it," she said. But it felt easier than asking for help. No one spoke right away. Then Elaine looked at me. I explained how long I'd been covering things, how many late bills, how many quiet transfers. I spoke about the box from the warehouse, the note, the loans, the down payment, the years I'd filled in the gaps without anyone noticing the cost. "The trust is final," I said. "The house is secure. But that safety can't come at the expense of everything else." Elaine let the silence settle. She didn't rush to fill it. The meeting ended with no promises, no apologies, just the truth said out loud. A week later, a card arrived in the mail. Cream envelope, no return address. Inside one sentence in my mother's handwriting, "You gave us more than we ever saw." A few days after that, my father sent a photo. The backyard, the old maple tree in full leaf, porch lights glowing just before dusk. Through Ryan, I heard that Holly found a place on the far side of town. Small apartment, peeling paint, a view of the river. She picked up a second job, weekend shifts at a local diner. She didn't reach out. I didn't either. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel like a wound. It felt clean. Summer settled in without much fuss. The trees behind my building filled out, and the sky held its light well past dinner time. My days slipped into something close to rhythm. I worked. I cooked simple meals. I spent evenings out on the balcony with a book in my lap, letting the pages turn slowly while the wind lifted the edges. My parents called now and then. The conversations were brief, but no longer strained. My mother mentioned a new recipe she wanted to try. My father told me the tomatoes were coming in better than expected. It wasn't closeness, not exactly, just steadiness. I didn't hear from Holly, but word found its way to me. Ryan passed along small updates during weekend check-ins. She was still at the diner, still in the apartment by the river. No new blow-ups, no disasters. I didn't press for more. Then one afternoon, a manila envelope appeared in my mailbox. No name on the return, just a P.O. box in the city. Inside was another batch of paperwork, this time from a financial auditing service, one Marissa had hired months earlier when we first structured the trust. They had completed a final review. Most of it was procedural. Everything was in order. The trust was secure, no breaches, no unauthorized access. But near the bottom of the folder was a flagged notation, a request that had been denied weeks earlier. It had come from an online form submission. Someone had tried to add a new contact to the notification list for beneficiary alerts. The email address used was familiar. It was Holly's. She hadn't broken through. The system caught it before it got past the first checkpoint. But the attempt was there, quiet buried, but visible now. I brought the file to Marissa's office the next day. She didn't look surprised. Sometimes, she said, people test the fence just to see if it holds. She suggested we archive the record, notify the trustee, and let it be. I agreed. Still that night, I changed every password connected to the trust. I removed my phone number from the family contact list. I updated my own account, set up additional verification, and closed an old joint savings account I'd kept with my parents from years ago, one that hadn't been used since I left college, but still sat open. By the time I was done, it was close to midnight. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when you know there's nothing left you forgot to do. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at the table as the sun came through the blinds. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote out a simple list. Just for myself. Not budgets, not family logistics, just goals. Small ones. Walk twice a week. Take that pottery class at the community center. Update the will. Open a new savings account for things that hadn't happened yet. I called it the Future Fund. I didn't tell anyone about it. No labels, no obligations, just mine. It was early August when another email arrived. Short, unsigned. This isn't over. No return address. No context. Marissa reviewed the metadata. Nothing traceable. Could have been anyone. But we both knew who it likely was. I didn't respond. Instead, I scheduled a check-in with the trustee and asked for a full audit of the disbursement records since the trust had gone into effect. Everything was clean, no signs of tampering. But I authorized a policy shift. Any future changes to the trust, no matter how small, would now require 2 forms of ID and a notarized request. That same week, I made another change. I removed my email from all shared family logins, streaming accounts, utility portals, old phone plan dashboards. Anything that once connected me to the old family network was gone. It wasn't an act of distance. It was clarity. That Friday, I drove out to the garden center just outside town and bought a few potted herbs, rosemary, thyme, basil. Nothing fancy. I lined them up on the balcony rail and watered them slowly, watching the soil darken and settle. No one asked where I was that day. No one needed me to fix anything. That evening, a voicemail came through from my father. Just one sentence. The porch light's working again. No explanation, no request. Just that. I saved the message and went on with my evening. Later that month, I ran into Ryan at the hardware store. He was picking up paint for a spare room. We talked for a bit, mostly small things. Then he said, "She's still struggling." I didn't ask who he meant. "She's staying afloat," he added, "but just barely." I nodded. "She said she misses the old version of you," he said quietly. I thought about that on the drive home. The version that handled things, that stayed in the background and kept the roof from caving in. But that version wasn't coming back. The next morning, I picked up pastries from the corner bakery and dropped one off at Marissa's office. Just a thank you, nothing more. She wasn't in, but I left the bag with her receptionist, who smiled and said, "She'll know it's from you." I went home and made tea. No calls, no texts, just a quiet afternoon with the windows open and the sound of someone mowing grass in the distance. That evening, as the sky turned pink above the treetops, I opened the new savings account. I transferred a small amount in, just enough to start. The label field was optional. I left it blank. September came quietly. The air shifted just enough in the mornings to remind you summer was fading. I swapped the light curtains for thicker ones, replaced the herbs on the balcony with mums, and started using the kettle again instead of the microwave. My days moved slow, even unremarkable in the best way. Nothing urgent, nothing broken, just space. One morning, while clearing out the back of a desk drawer, I found an old stack of birthday cards, mostly unopened. I sat with them for the moment, thumbed through the envelopes. Most were signed from Mom and Dad. One was from Holly a few years back when she still signed her name with a heart over the Y. I set the bundle aside and kept cleaning. By midweek, I had finished organizing the last of my personal paperwork, taxes, insurance, investment files. I created a folder marked Essential and stored it in the lockbox under the bed. No one else had the key. That Friday, I stopped by the grocery store after work. I picked up vegetables, coffee, and a bottle of white wine. On my way to the register, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. "She's leaving the diner." No details, no explanation. I replied, "Is she okay?" His response came a few minutes later. "She said it's temporary. Said she's figuring something out." I didn't write back again. That night I made dinner and sat by the window while the wine chilled in the fridge. The street below was quiet. A couple walked past with their dog. A child ran ahead with a scooter. No one looked up. I hadn't spoken to Holly since the mediation. There'd been no need. No bridges mended, but no fires either. The absence between us had settled into something neutral. Later that weekend, I received a small envelope in the mail. Pale blue. My name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a folded piece of paper with just one sentence written across the center. "You were right to stop. No signature." I placed it in the same drawer as the cards. The following week, my parents called. Together this time. Mom talked about fall decorations. Dad mentioned trimming the hedge out front. They didn't bring up Holly. They didn't ask me for anything. Just talked about their week, the weather, what they made for dinner. It was the longest we'd spoken since the trust was signed. After we hung up, I sat at the table with my tea and thought about all the years that had come before, the unspoken expectations, the late-night payments, the phone calls that always came with a catch. Now the silence felt lighter. No more hints, no more guilt stitched into the pauses. Just a quiet where something new might take shape. A few days later, I walked past the bakery and saw a family sitting outside, parents laughing, 2 kids sharing a muffin crumbs scattered across the table. I watched them for a moment, then kept walking. I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel like I was watching someone else's life. I just felt steady. That evening, I cleaned out the hallway closet, found a box labeled "For Later." Inside were old receipts, family photos, notes from holidays past. At the very bottom was a crumpled sheet of notebook paper, one I didn't remember keeping. A list of things to do when I have money. It was in my handwriting. I must have written it years ago. I read it over once, then folded it and placed it in the trash. The next morning, I checked the balance on my new savings account, the one I'd labeled Future Fund. I transferred a little more into it. No reason, no deadline, just enough. Later that day, Ryan called. "She's found another job," he said. "Front desk at a gym. Early hours. It's not much, but it's honest work." I thanked him for letting me know. He didn't say more, and neither did I. That evening, I stood on the balcony and looked out at the line of trees just starting to turn. A single red leaf clung to the edge of the railing. It was almost time. That Thanksgiving, I made cornbread dressing from scratch, my grandmother's recipe. I'd never tried it before, always figured it was too much trouble, but something about pulling that old recipe card from the box and laying it on the counter felt right, like setting something straight, even if no one else would ever know. I set the table for one. No centerpiece, no fine china, just my everyday plate and a glass of cider. Outside, the sky was that soft gray that only shows up in late November, the kind that hushes everything beneath it. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. After dinner, I went for a walk. The neighborhood was quiet, most porches lit by string lights or flickering candles. In a few windows, I saw families gathered around tables, passing bowls and laughing over stories they all knew by heart. I used to think scenes like that were promises. Now I see them more like photographs, true for some, but not everyone. When I got back home, I sat down with a notebook and made a short list. Not of chores or goals or grievances, just a list of things I knew for sure. 1, I don't owe anyone silence to keep the peace. 2, My kindness doesn't require an audience. 3. Walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's the only way to stop being erased. Holly never did reach back out. Not directly. Ryan sent a photo a few weeks later, her standing outside the gym, smiling in a staff sweatshirt, coffee in hand. I saved it to my phone and left it at that. We'd both made choices. She had her path. I had mine. Mom called on Christmas Eve. She didn't ask for money, didn't ask for a visit. She just said she was thinking of me. I said thank you. We stayed on the phone 5 minutes, maybe 6, and when we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the call. I just made a cup of tea and turned on the radio. That winter, I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a weekend trip, just me, a small cabin up in the Blue Ridge. I read books, cooked simple meals, watched the trees sway under the snow. And when I came back home, it was with a quiet I hadn't known I was missing. I still see the world clearly. I know not everything gets fixed, not every wound scabs over neat. But there's peace in letting go of what never saw you, never heard you. In choosing to stop handing your dignity to people who'd never earned it. Some things don't need an audience to matter. Sometimes the justice is quiet. It's the absence of chaos, the reclaiming of breath. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it made you feel seen or reminded you of your own quiet strength, I hope you'll leave a comment or share it with someone who might need it. And if you're still finding your way out of someone else's shadow, take your time. You're not alone.